Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
The Daily Compliance News for August 13, 2021, the Friday the 13th edition. We have no lead story because of this propitious day, so we'll just jump right into our news today. The Department of Justice has appointed David Last as chief of the FCPA unit. He was made acting chief in April when the prior chief resigned to go into private practice. Last has been a 5-year veteran of the FCPA unit, serving as a trial lawyer, assistant chief, and principal assistant chief until being appointed head. Before joining the DOJ's fraud section, he was a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump is in for more trouble as a group in Scotland has obtained a ruling which could force the former president to explain how he funded the deals which allowed him to buy the Turnberry Resort in Scotland. In England, you have to if you can't explain the source of your money, you can have an unexplained wealth order issued against you. And if you can't explain it, then you forfeit your property. Of course, Trump can't explain it. He can because it came from Russia, but that's probably about it. A McDonald's franchise has settled a suit by employees who were forced to wear dog diapers as masks. This is one of the most humiliating stories I've recently come across, and a franchisee, in an attempt to provide some modicum of worker safety, either wouldn't or couldn't provide regular masks, and so he gave dog diapers. He then later made coffee filters into masks, which you can imagine how well those worked. And then finally, he did get some masks, but he required the employees, these were paper masks, and he required multiple uses and wanted them to be washed daily until they frayed too much for good use. Numerous employees contracted COVID. This was in the major part of the pandemic in 2020. So these workers sued, and they were successful. And this franchisee has agreed to not do that again. And finally, a really interesting article in the deal book section of New York Times on the elan of Elon Musk, where Carson Block, the volatile short seller who runs Muddy Waters Capital, penned some rare words of his own about Elon Musk. He said that Musk's narcissism drew his disdain and stoked his belief that Tesla's business would crater, but he underestimated Musk's ability to raise huge capital in huge amounts, reinvent himself, and captivate shareholders. And the key is that Tesla shorts focused on Tesla's lack of scale to compete in electric vehicles with GM, Ford, etc. They were correct that lack of scale would have been the death of Tesla, but they were wrong by looking at the scale. Tesla is not in the position it is because of the scale of its manufacturing base or even its unit sales, but the scale of its capital base, which is nearly $700 billion in market cap. And it's a really good point that you sometimes have to look at alternative measures to see where a company may be headed. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.